Okay, so let's be real for a second. Spatial planning. Not exactly the most captivating topic, right? I mean, it kind of sounds like watching paint dry.
Yeah, you're not wrong there.
But what if I told you there's this system in South Africa that's basically a high-tech GPS for development?
Interesting.
It guides everything. Where roads go, how we protect those incredible landscapes, you name it. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. The Northern Cape Planning System.
The NCPS. Okay, I'm listening.
And think about it, the Northern Cape is South Africa's biggest province, right? So you can just imagine the challenges they face managing all that land.
Oh, absolutely. Managing that much land, you've got to have some serious strategy in place.
Exactly. And that's where the NCPS comes in.
So tell me more about what makes the NCPS so special.
Well, what's fascinating is how it takes this huge, complex province and essentially creates a roadmap for sustainable development.
A roadmap, that's a good way to put it.
It helps ensure that projects aren't just randomly popping up all over the place. Everything fits into a bigger vision for the whole region.
So it's not just a case of, oh, let's build a factory here, let's put a road there. There's actual thought behind it.
Exactly. The NCPS is like the central hub for everything related to spatial planning in the entire province. Think of it like putting together a giant puzzle.
Okay, I like the puzzle analogy.
Go on. But instead of having a picture on a box to guide you, you're using the Northern Cape Provincial Spatial Development Framework, the PSDF.
PSDF, got it.
And that PSDF, well, it outlines all the province's long-term goals. And then the NCPS helps make sure every single piece of that puzzle, from infrastructure to conservation, fits into that vision.
Oh, I see. So the PSDF is like the big picture, and the NCPS is the toolbox that helps make it all happen.
You got it.
So how does it actually work? What are some of the tools in that toolbox?
Well, one of the key tools is something called the Spatial Data Repository. Now, I know data repository sounds a bit dry.
Yeah, not the most exciting phrase.
But trust me, it's actually pretty amazing. Picture a massive, searchable library of maps and data. It has everything you could possibly imagine. Property boundaries, endangered species locations, existing infrastructure, you name it.
Wow, so it's like having all the pieces of the puzzle laid out in front of you before you even start putting them together.
Exactly. Having all that info in one place allows for informed decision-making, which is crucial.
That makes sense. So you mentioned earlier that the NCPS helps ensure development is sustainable. What does that look like in practice?
Well, let's say someone proposes a new mining project in a particular area, right?
Okay, sure.
The NCPS lets planners overlay all sorts of data on that exact location. Things like environmental sensitivity, how close it is to communities, the impact it could have on water resources, the whole 9 yards.
Wow, so they can use that information to really assess whether the project is even feasible in the first place, and then minimize any negative consequences if they do decide to go ahead.
Exactly. So instead of just looking at, oh, this mine could bring in lots of money, they're thinking about the social and environmental impacts as well.
That's a much more holistic approach, for sure.
And it's not just about saying yes or no to a project either. The NCPS also helps figure out potential ways to make things better, to mitigate any negative impacts.
Oh, interesting. So like what? Give me an example.
Well, maybe the mine can be designed in a way that reduces its impact on a nearby water source, for example. Or perhaps they could offset any environmental damage in some way.
Right, right. Find ways to balance things out a bit.
Exactly. It's all about finding that sweet spot where development can happen, but it's done in a way that benefits the whole province now and in the future.
It sounds like a really valuable tool. And you mentioned something earlier that I wanted to circle back to, this idea of public participation.
Oh, yes. Transparency and public participation are absolutely key with the NCPS.
So how does that work?
Well, they have this public viewer that anyone can use. It lets citizens access key info about projects and even participate in planning discussions.
Wow, that's amazing. It gives people a real voice in shaping their province's future.
It does. And I think that's so important because so often these planning processes can feel like they're happening behind closed doors. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. It can feel very exclusive.
But with the NCPS, it's like throwing open the curtains and letting everyone in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that kind of transparency can lead to much better decisions, right? Because when communities are involved right from the start, they can share their local knowledge and insights. And that can really help shape projects in a way that benefits everyone.
Absolutely. So we've talked about the PSDF, the big picture, and the Spatial Data Repository, which is obviously a key tool. What else is in this NCPS toolkit?
Well, there are a bunch of other tools, but one I find particularly interesting is the Project Prioritization and Management tool.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Well, imagine you've got a limited budget, right? and you have tons of potential projects all competing for funding. This tool helps decision makers choose the projects that'll give them the most bang for their buck.
Makes sense. You don't want to waste resources on projects that aren't going to deliver.
Exactly. And it considers all sorts of factors like economic impact, job creation, environmental sustainability, the whole shebang.
So it's not just about doing things, it's about doing the right things in the right order.
You nailed it. And this tool really helps prevent those situations where a project might look good on paper, but in reality, it's just not feasible or doesn't align with the overall vision for the province.
Right. It's like having this filter that sifts through all the potential projects and identifies the ones that have the greatest potential to transform the Northern Cape for the better.
Precisely. The whole point of the NCPS is to make sure that development isn't just happening randomly, it's strategic, it's sustainable, and it's driven by data and community input.
So if we zoom out a bit, what are the ultimate goals of the NCPS? What's it all striving to achieve?
Well, one of the main goals is to make sure everything complies with this Spatial Planning and Land Use Management Act.
Okay. And what does that act cover?
It lays out a framework for sustainable and equitable land use, and the NCPS makes sure all projects stick to those guidelines.
So it's like having this built-in safeguard to prevent situations where development happens in a way that hurts the environment or communities.
You got it. But it goes beyond just compliance. The NCPS is also all about optimizing resource allocation, making sure that those precious resources, whether it's funding or land, are going to the projects that'll have the biggest impact.
Making every rand count.
Exactly. And then it's designed to make the whole land use application process better, more efficient, more transparent, for everyone involved.
So cut through the red tape.
Exactly. Less bureaucracy, more action.
I like it. What other objectives are we aiming for?
Well, another big one is promoting what we call resilient and sustainable development. It means tackling things like environmental vulnerability and socioeconomic disparities head on. And the NCPS gives us a framework to address those challenges in a really proactive way.
So ultimately, it's about creating a future where the Northern Cape can thrive, both economically and environmentally.
Precisely. And last but not least, it's about facilitating cross-boundary coordination, because no province is an island, right?
Right.
So the NCPS encourages collaboration with neighboring regions to tackle shared challenges and opportunities.
Collaboration is key. Working together across boundaries is crucial for truly sustainable development. So we've covered a lot here, the why, the how, the what of the NCPS. But what does all this actually mean for the average person living in the Northern Cape? How does this system affect their daily life?
That's a great question, and that's exactly what we'll be exploring in the next part of our deep dive. It's easy to get kind of lost, in all the technical stuff when we talk about a system like this.
Yeah, for sure.
But what's really incredible is how the NCPS actually makes a difference, a real tangible difference for the people living in the Northern Cape.
Okay, I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
Give me an example. How does the NCPS impact everyday people?
Okay, so imagine a small farming community that's been struggling with drought.
Okay, tough situation.
Yeah, really tough. Their crops are failing. They're having trouble, just making ends meet.
Right.
But with the NCPS, they can actually access data on groundwater resources and figure out where they could potentially harvest rainwater.
So it gives them options.
Exactly. They can even see if maybe setting up some small-scale irrigation projects would work in their area.
So instead of just giving up, they have a tool that helps them find real solutions to a really difficult problem.
Exactly. It gives them a way to adapt and, hopefully thrive again.
That's great. So it sounds like it's not just for big development projects. It can also help on a much smaller community level.
Absolutely. It's about supporting people at all levels. And it's not just about, agriculture either. Let's say there's a young person who wants to start a tourism business.
Okay.
They're passionate about the Northern Cape. They want to share its beauty with the world, but they're not sure where to begin.
Yeah, starting a business is always daunting.
For sure. The NCPS can help them identify, which areas have the most tourism potential, what the zoning regulations are, what kind of infrastructure they might need.
It's like having a guidebook for turning their dreams into reality.
Exactly. And it can even help connect them with potential investors.
That's a game changer, especially for someone just starting out.
And of course, it's not all about economic development either. The NCPS is also crucial for protecting the Northern Cape's natural environment. I mean, it's an incredible place with so much biodiversity.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got everything from deserts to mountains to coastlines.
Exactly. So let's say there's a conservation group that's trying to protect a sensitive ecosystem. The NCPS gives them access to really detailed data on things like biodiversity hotspots, wildlife corridors, and any potential threats from development projects.
So they can use that info to make a stronger argument for protecting those areas.
Precisely. And they can make sure that if development does happen, it's done in a way that minimizes the impact on the environment.
So again, it's about finding that balance between development and conservation.
Exactly. And let's not forget about the whole public participation aspect we talked about earlier.
Right, the public viewer.
Yeah, that's so important because it gives people a real way to get involved in shaping the future of their communities.
So if someone's worried about a mining project near their town, for example.
They can use the public viewer to learn about the project, see what the potential impacts might be, and even submit their feedback to the decision makers.
It gives them a voice instead of feeling like things are just happening to them.
Exactly. That kind of transparency and engagement leads to better outcomes for everyone because when you involve communities from the get-go, there's a much better chance that development will be truly sustainable and beneficial for everyone.
It sounds like the NCPS is having a really positive impact on the Northern Cape. But I imagine there are also challenges in putting such a complex system into practice. What are some of the hurdles you face?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is simply the sheer size of the Northern Cape. I mean, it's a massive province with so many different landscapes and communities.
Yeah, I can imagine just collecting and verifying data from such a huge area and keeping it all up to date must be a huge task.
It is. It's a constant process of gathering, analyzing, and updating information to make sure the NCPS reflects what's actually happening on the ground. And on top of that, you got to make sure the system is user-friendly for everyone, not just for tech experts.
Right, because the whole point is to empower everyone, even people in remote areas with limited internet access.
Exactly. Bridging the digital divide is a crucial part of making the NCPS truly inclusive. So it's an ongoing effort that involves providing training and support to local communities, developing simplified versions of the system that can be used offline, and working with community organizations to improve access to technology.
It's about meeting people where they are and making sure that no one is left behind in this digital age.
Absolutely. Another challenge, which is a bit more subtle, is making sure the NCPS is really integrated into decision-making at all levels of government. You know, sometimes there can be resistance to change or maybe a hesitation to embrace new technology.
So it's about changing mindsets and showing people the real value a system like this can bring.
Exactly. It's about demonstrating how it can improve things for everyone. And of course, there's always the challenge of funding. Maintaining and updating a system like the NCPS requires ongoing investment, and sometimes securing that funding can be a bit of a battle.
Especially with government budgets being what they are.
Hmm.
But I imagine the long-term benefits of the NCPS far outweigh the costs, right?
Oh, absolutely. A well-functioning spatial planning system like this can save a lot of money in the long run. It prevents costly mistakes, optimizes resource allocation, and promotes sustainable development. It's an investment that pays off for generations to come.
So we've talked about the challenges, but what about the future? What's on the horizon for the NCPS? Any exciting developments we can look forward to?
Definitely. There's so much happening right now. One area where we're seeing incredible innovation is in the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning.
Oh, wow. So you could potentially predict future development trends or identify potential conflicts between land uses before they even happen.
Exactly. You could even automate some of the more tedious aspects of data analysis, which would free up time for people to focus on more strategic thinking.
It sounds like the NCPS is constantly evolving and pushing the boundaries of what's possible in spatial planning.
It is. And another exciting development is the growing emphasis on citizen science and crowdsourcing. Imagine people being able to contribute their local knowledge and observations directly to the NCPS database.
So you're essentially tapping into the collective intelligence of the entire Northern Cape.
Precisely. And that would give us an even richer and more dynamic understanding of the province. We're also seeing a big push to integrate the NCPS with other government systems, like those dealing with environmental monitoring, disaster management, and infrastructure development.
So it's all about breaking down those silos and creating a more connected and efficient system of governance.
Exactly. It's about seeing the bigger picture and making decisions that benefit everyone. And finally, there's a growing recognition of the importance of using the NCPS to tackle climate change and promote sustainability.
So you could use the system to identify areas that are vulnerable to climate impacts, for example.
Exactly. We can also use it to promote things like renewable energy development and encourage sustainable land management practices. It's about using technology to build a more resilient and sustainable future for the Northern Cape and for all of us, really.
It really is inspiring to see how technology can be used to solve these complex challenges and create a better future. So we've covered a lot of ground here, exploring the challenges and opportunities of the NCPS. But let's shift gears a bit and wrap up our deep dive with some final thoughts on the big picture.
It's amazing when you really think about it.
Yeah.
Unpacking the NCPS like this, it's become so clear that this system, it's about so much more than just, data points and algorithms.
Yeah, it really goes beyond the technical stuff.
It's about people at its core, empowering communities, protecting the environment of the Northern Cape, creating a future where everyone can thrive.
Absolutely. And it took a whole team of people to make this happen. Visionaries, policymakers, tech experts. It's a real testament to collaboration and what we can achieve when we work together.
It kind of gives you hope, right?
It does, definitely.
Even with all these massive challenges we're facing, climate change, inequality, you name it, it shows that we can come up with these incredible solutions.
Yeah, it's like a beacon of hope, showing that we can build a better future. I like that. A beacon of hope. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the NCPS, what's the one thing you want our listeners to remember?
I think the most important takeaway is that the NCPS is a tool for positive change. It's a system that gives us the power to make smarter decisions, to work together more effectively, and to create a future where both people and the environment can thrive.
That's a great way to put it. It reminds us that we have the ability to shape our own destiny, and systems like the NCPS can help us do that in a way that's fair and sustainable.
And, knowing that a system like this exists, it really makes you think, how could you use it to tackle the challenges in your own community?
Right. What opportunities does it unlock for you, for your business, for your organization? It's a question worth asking.
Definitely. And we encourage everyone to check out the NCPS Public Viewer, see how it's shaping the future of the Northern Cape, and imagine how you can be a part of that journey.
It's a journey we're all on together. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the NCPS.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.